Commander Reese Blackwood crouched behind the holographic blind, her weathered fingers dancing across the control panel as she adjusted the camouflage frequency. Through the shimmer of the concealment field, she watched the Xylaxian research team examining the saltwater crocodile habitat with increasing frustration. The lead researcher, a towering figure of crystalline angles and pulsing biolights, gestured at the seemingly empty waterway with multiple appendages. Specimen has remained motionless for 72 standard hours, it announced, its translated voice carrying notes of both confusion and disgust. Energy expenditure approaches 0. Hunting efficiency rating catastrophically subop. Blackwood suppressed a smile as she recorded the exchange. The massive crocodile they were observing hadn't moved because it didn't need to. It was simply the concept drove the hyper-efficient Xylaxians to distraction. Their entire civilization was built on constant motion, perpetual optimization, the elimination of all. The idea of a predator that could simply wait violated everything they believed about survival. Perhaps the specimen is deceased? Suggested a junior researcher, its crystalline form shifting through shades of analytical blue. The lead researcher's biolights flashed in irritation. Negative. Life signs remain stable. It simply persists. The last word carried such bafflement that Blackwood had to bite her lip to keep from laughing. The Xylaxians had arrived on Earth expecting to find a primitive world in need of their superior optimization. Instead, they'd found themselves face to face with evolutionary strategies that defied their comprehension. Her neural implant buzzed softly, delivering an update from Central Command. Operation Patience is proceeding as planned. Dr. Nadia Cowrey's voice whispered in. The Xylaxians have diverted 40% of their research resources to understanding Earth's predator behaviors. They're completely fixated on the inefficiency of our ecosystem. Understood, Blackwood subvocalized. Their lead researcher here is about to have an aneurysm trying to understand why a peak predator would waste energy by not constantly. Should have seen them last week when we showed them how long a python can go between me. The Xylaxians had moved closer to the water's edge now, their scanning devices hovering over the surface like anxious insects. The crocodile remained perfectly still, only its eyes tracking the movement. Blackwood's implant automatically calculated the tension in the creature's muscles, the microscopic adjustments of its position. After 6 months of studying Earth's wildlife, the alien still hadn't learned to read these subtle signs. Initiating deep scan of neural pathways, announced the junior researcher, attempting to identify malfunction in predatory drive response. Blackwood's smile widened. There was no malfunction to find. This was evolution's answer to the eternal question of survival. Sometimes the most effective strategy was simply to. Humanity had learned this lesson well, which was exactly why the Xylaxians' arrival hadn't triggered the panicked response they'd expected from a primitive species. The crocodile's eyes shifted slightly, tracking a fish that had darted near the surface. The movement was so subtle that Blackwood would have missed it without her augmented. The Xylaxian researchers, for all their advanced technology, didn't even notice. Recording indicates this specimen has maintained this state for approximately 700 local days, the lead researcher noted, its crystalline form vibrating with what Blackwood had learned to recognize as extreme agitation. Previous data suggested maximum sustainable hunting delay of perhaps 30 days. This contradicts all established models of predatory behavior. Welcome to Earth, Blackwood whispered to herself, knowing that humanity's greatest advantage in this first contact scenario wasn't their hidden technological capabilities or their military strength. It was the fact that their visitors couldn't comprehend a strategy that involved simply being still, waiting for exactly the right moment. Her implant hummed again. Xylaxian High Command has requested another formal presentation on Earth's predator species, Cowrey reported. They're particularly interested in what they're calling the efficiency paradox of our apex predator. Perfect, Blackwood replied silently. Should we show them the anaconda next? I hear they still haven't figured out how it can survive for months between meals. Negative, came the response. We're saving that for the military capability briefing. Let them stew on the crocodile for now. Sometimes the best way to win is to simply wait. The crocodile's eyes shifted again, ever so slightly, and Blackwood settled in to continue her observation. Like the ancient predator before her, she understood the value of patience. The Xylaxians would learn, eventually. The only question was whether they'd figure it out before Earth revealed just how much humanity had learned from their planet's most patient hunters. 6 months earlier, The Xylaxian ships had appeared in high orbit with all the subtlety of a super. Their crystalline vessels, each a masterpiece of geometric precision, had bypassed Earth's early warning systems, as if they didn't exist. Commander Reese Blackwood had stood in the United Earth Defense Council chamber, watching the first transmission from the alien fleet with a mix of awe and trepidation. Your world operates at approximately 12.3% efficiency, the Xylaxian Supreme Coordinator, Unity through Optimization, had announced. Its crystalline form had dominated the holographic display, biolights pulsing with what they would later learn was barely concealed revulsion. This is unacceptable. We offer correct. Dr. Cowrie, standing beside Blackwood, had muttered under her breath. They haven't even said hello yet. But the Xylaxians weren't interested in pleasant. Their next series of transmissions had been pure data, analyses of Earth's ecosystems, detailed critiques of human society's wasteful practice, and a comprehensive plan for what they called planetary optimization. Your apex predators exemplify the problem, Unity had continued, displaying footage of various Earth species. They expend minimal energy, often remaining dormant for extended periods. This represents a catastrophic waste of biological potential. Under our guidance, such inefficiencies will be eliminated. The council chamber had erupted in whispered conversations, but Blackwood's attention had been caught by something else. The way the aliens discussed Earth's predators. There was something in their tone, a note of genuine distress at the idea of creatures that could simply. Commander Blackwood, General Octavia Reeves had called out, her dark eyes sharp with interest. You have experience with wildlife preservation. What's your assessment? Blackwood had stepped forward, studying the Xylaxian footage. They're not disgusted by our technology level, she'd said slowly. They're disturbed by our bio. By the way, Earth's life forms have evolved. A smile had tugged at her lips, and they're completely missing the point. That moment had changed everything. While the Xylaxians had expected Earth to either submit to their optimization or respond with immediate, ineffective resistance, humanity had chosen a third. They had invited the aliens to study Earth's ecosystems, to help them understand why Earth's creatures behaved as. Your species claims to be Earth's dominant life, Unity had declared during their second official meeting. Yet you permit these inefficient predators to persist. You even protect them. This suggests a fundamental flaw in your development. Blackwood had simply smiled. Perhaps you should study them more closely. You might find T here is more to efficiency than constant. The Xylaxians had taken the bait, establishing research stations across the globe. They had expected to document the failures of Earth's evolutionary. Instead, they had found themselves increasingly obsessed with understanding how such inefficient creatures could not only survive, but thrive. They still don't get it, Cowrie had told Blackwood 1 month into the observation period. They keep trying to find the malfunction that makes Earth's predators conserve it. They can't comprehend that waiting is a strategy. Of course they can't, Blackwood had replied, watching footage of Xylaxian researchers becoming increasingly agitated as they observed a python that hadn't moved for. Their entire civilization is built on constant optimization, perpetual motion. The idea that sometimes the most efficient action is inaction. It breaks their mind, and that had become humanity's edge. While the Xylaxians had initially dismissed Earth's military capabilities as primitive, they had failed to realize that humanity, like their planet's predators, had learned the value of patience. Behind the scenes, Earth's defenses had been quietly advancing, incorporating elements of Xylaxian technology while maintaining the appearance of technological inferiority. They think we're showing them our weaknesses, General Reeves had said during a classified briefing. Instead, we're teaching them to fear stillness, to question every shadow, every moment of apparent inactivity. Like the crocodile in the water, we're teaching them that lack of motion doesn't mean lack of. Now, 6 months later, the Xylaxians were beginning to show signs of strain. Their perfect efficiency was faltering as they devoted more and more resources to understanding Earth's primitive predators. Their confidence in their superiority was cracking, piece by piece, as they faced the ultimate challenge to their worldview. The idea that sometimes the most powerful strategy was simply to wait. The Xylaxian research complex was a testament to their obsession with efficiency. All clean lines and crystalline surfaces, each angle precisely calculated to maximize energy flow. Commander Blackwood moved through its corridors like a ghost, her adaptive camouflage suit matching the facility's ever-shifting patterns of light. The latest security upgrades had been installed just days ago, but they still couldn't detect the quantum phase variations in her movement. Approaching primary observation chamber, she subvocalized through her neural link. Their head researcher, Optimal Solution Seeker, is about to begin today's demonstration. Confirmed, Dr. Cowrie responded. Remember, we want them focused on the hunting patterns. Let them see exactly how long our predators can maintain position. The observation chamber was massive, a geodesic dome housing several carefully recreated habitats. Blackwood positioned herself behind a crystalline support beam as a group of Xylaxian researchers gathered around what appeared to be a simple pond. Beneath its surface, barely visible in the murky water, lay one of Earth's most patient killers. Observe specimen designation. Crocodiles porosus. Optimal Solution Seeker announced, its crystalline form shifting through shades of academic authority. We have been monitoring this subject's hunting behaviors for 3 standard cycles. In that time, it has made exactly 2 attempts to acquire prey, despite multiple opportunities. The other researchers' biolights pulsed with distress. One of them, its form more fluid than the others, moved closer to the water's edge. Energy expenditure calculations suggest it should have expired 47 times by now. Yet its vital signs remain stable. How is this possible? Blackwood smiled behind her camouflage. The Xylaxians had spent months trying to understand how Earth's predators could survive while violating what they considered to be fundamental laws of energy efficiency. Every time they thought they had figured it out, Earth threw them another evolutionary curveball. Introducing prey stimulus, Optimal Solution Seeker declared. A small robotic device designed to mimic a wounded waterfowl skittered across the water's surface. The crocodile didn't move. Not a muscle twitched, not a ripple disturbed the water. The Xylaxians' biolights flickered with increasing agitation. Stimulus ignored, one researcher noted, its voice carrying unmistakable frustration. Subject maintains minimal energy state despite clear opportunity for successful hunt. Previous specimens from other worlds would have responded immediately. Calculating energy expenditure versus potential caloric gain, another added. By our models, immediate action provides optimal outcome in 89.7% of scenarios. Yet these Earth predators consistently delay. They wait. They practice inefficiency. Optimal Solution Seeker finished, its crystalline form briefly losing coherence and agitation. And yet they survive. They thrive. This violates everything we understand about predator-prey dynamics. Blackwood's Neuralink hummed with an incoming message from General Reeves. Status update, Commander? They're still trying to solve the efficiency paradox, Blackwood replied silently. Every time they run the numbers, they become more confused, more disturbed. They can't reconcile their models with what they're seeing. Perfect, Reeves responded. The latest intelligence suggests their military strategists are starting to question their basic assumptions about us. They've noticed that our defensive positions don't follow their models of optimal response patterns. Below, the crocodile finally moved, a single, almost imperceptible shift of its eye. The Xylaxian researchers immediately burst into a flurry of activity, their instruments recording every microscopic detail of the motion. They were so focused on their measurements that they missed the true significance of the movement. The predator wasn't acting out of inefficiency or it was making a choice, a calculated decision to wait for the perfect. Sometimes, Blackwood subvocalized. Watching the aliens' growing discomfort, the most efficient strategy is to appear inefficient. She thought of Earth's hidden defensive capabilities, of the technologies and strategies they had developed, while appearing to be simply studying their visit. Like the crocodile in the pond, humanity had learned the value of patience, of waiting for exactly the right moment to reveal their true capability. The Xylaxians had come to Earth expecting to find a primitive world in need of optimization. Instead, they were slowly realizing that they might have stumbled into the perfect trap, one baited with their own assumptions about efficiency and superiority. Attention all observation team. Optimal Solution Seeker's voice resonated through the research facility's crystalline walls. Central chamber. Immediate convergence required. New data demands collective analysis. Blackwood watched from her hidden position as Xylaxian researchers flowed into the central chamber, like mercury seeking it. Her adaptive camouflage shifted to match the chamber's pulsing bioluminescence as she positioned herself near one of the upper observation platforms. Initial findings: defy optimization protocol. The head researcher announced, its form fractaling into complex patterns of distress. Earth's apex predators demonstrate behavioral patterns that violate fundamental survival equations. The holographic display in the chamber's center came to life, showing multiple Earth predators in their natural habitats. A saltwater crocodile waiting motionless in murky, a python coiled in perfect stillness for weeks, a polar bear practicing infinite patience by a seal's breath. Statistical analysis complete. A junior researcher designated efficiency through motion announced, its biolights flickering rapidly. Crocodiles porosus can maintain hunting position for up to 730 local days without food acquisition. Energy consumption during this period drops to 0.3% of normal metabolic. The assembled Xylaxians' crystalline forms rippled with collective horror. In their society, such conservation of energy was viewed as near-death stasis, a complete failure of proper resource management. That's not even our most efficient predator, Blackwood sub-vocalized, knowing the data she was about to transmit would shatter their worldview even further. Through her neural link, she activated a dormant subroutine in their research system. New data flooded their displays. A Greenland shark, living for centuries at a metabolic rate barely above. A desert death adder, capable of remaining motionless for months, waiting for precisely the right prey to approach. Impossible. Optimal solution seeker's voice cracked with distortion. These beings, they defy every principle of predatory evolution we have documented across 17 star systems. Perhaps, a new voice cut through the chamber, causing every Xylaxian to crystallize in shock. You are measuring efficiency by the wrong metric. Blackwood deactivated her camouflage, stepping onto the platform above them. It was time. The revelation they'd been carefully orchestrating for months was about to unfold. Security breach. A guard's form shifted into aggressive geometries, but Optimal Solution Seeker raised an appendage for restraint. Commander Blackwood. The head researcher's voice carried complex harmonics of recognition. You have been observing our observation, just as Earth's predators have been teaching you about patience, she replied. You've been teaching us about your assumptions. She gestured to the displayed data. You see waste in their stillness, inefficiency in their waiting. But what if the waiting itself is the strategy? The chamber filled with discordant frequencies as the Xylaxians processed this concept. Their biolights pulsed in patterns of deep cognitive distress. These predators, Blackwood continued, haven't survived for millions of years through constant motion or perpetual optimization. They've survived because they understand that sometimes the most efficient action is no action at all. They wait. They watch. Like you have been watching us. Optimal Solution Seeker's voice carried the first note of genuine understanding Blackwood had heard from a Xylaxian. Exactly, she smiled. While you've been studying our primitive predators, trying to understand their inefficiency, you've been missing the larger pattern. Earth didn't evolve for constant motion. It evolved for patient precision. The holographic displays shifted again, showing new calculations. The energy saved by a crocodile's patience versus the energy expended in constant. The success rate of ambush predators compared to perpetual pursuers. The mathematical beauty of waiting for exactly the right moment. Your species. Optimal Solution Seeker's form had shifted into something more contemplative. You pattern yourself after these predators. We learn from them, Blackwood corrected. Just as you are learning now. The universe isn't always about constant optimization. Sometimes, it's about knowing when to. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. 6 months of researching Earth's predators had led the Xylaxians to this moment, the realization that their entire understanding of efficiency might be fundamentally flawed. Perhaps, Optimal Solution Seeker finally said, we should revise our initial assessment of Earth's evolutionary path. Blackwood nodded, knowing that the next phase of their strategy was about to begin. Like the crocodile in the pond, humanity had waited patiently for this exact moment, when their visitors would begin to question not just Earth's efficiency, but their own assumptions about power and survival. The tension in the Xylaxian High Command chamber could have been cut with a quantum blade. Commander Blackwood stood before their ruling council. her posture relaxed but alert, like a predator at ease in its territory. Above them, holographic displays showed Earth's deadliest hunters in action, or rather, in their characteristic stillness. Your civilization's mimicry of these primitive hunting patterns. Supreme Coordinator Unity Through Optimization's voice carried harmonics of deep concern. It extends beyond mere biological observation? We don't mimic them, Blackwood replied, her voice carrying the same patient certainty she'd developed watching crocodiles wait for their prey. We understand them. Tell me, in the 6 months you've been studying Earth, have you ever wondered why we so willingly showed you our predators' hunting patterns? The crystalline forms of the council shifted uneasily. A junior coordinator, designated Progress Through Motion, fragmented briefly before reforming. To demonstrate your world's need for optimization. To show your recognition of biological inefficiencies. Blackwood smiled, and in that smile was every patient predator that had ever waited in perfect stillness for its moment to strike. She nodded to Dr. Cowrie, who stood at a secondary control panel. The holographic displays shifted, showing new data, but not of Earth's wildlife. Instead, they showed the Xylaxian fleet movements over the past 6 months. Their research vessel deployments, their security patrol pattern, all of them, Blackwood knew, had been subtly influenced by humanity's apparent primitive responses, their seemingly inefficient defensive positions. While you were studying our predators, Blackwood explained, trying to understand why they would waste energy by waiting, you never realized you were falling into the same pattern they use with their prey. You moved exactly where we wanted you to move. You focused exactly where we wanted you to focus. Unity Through Optimization's form crystallized into sharp, defensive angles. Explain. Every time you observed a crocodile waiting motionless for days, you adjusted your patrol patterns to compensate for what you saw as inefficiency. Every time you documented a python's ability to fast for months, you repositioned your research vessels to better understand this flaw in Earth's ecosystem. The displays shifted again, showing the gradual changes in Xylaxian fleet positioning over the months. Like prey being slowly maneuvered into the perfect position by a patient predator, their ships had shifted into increasingly vulnerable formations. Impossible, Progress Through Motion protested. Our tactical systems are beyond your technological level. Our defensive calculations are based entirely on the assumption of constant motion and immediate response, Blackwood interrupted. Just like every species your people have encountered before us. But Earth evolved differently. We learned different lessons. Dr. Cowrie activated the final display sequence. Hidden Earth defense platforms, previously masked by what the Xylaxians had dismissed as atmospheric anomalies, revealed their positions. Quantum weapon emplacements, disguised as primitive satellite debris, powered up. The true extent of humanity's military capability became clear, not in a sudden show of force, but in the gradual revelation of patience rewarded. While you were puzzling over our predator's ability to wait, Blackwood continued, you never questioned why we were so eager to show you that particular trait. While you were calculating the waste of energy in their hunting patterns, you never realized you were being hunted yourselves. The council chamber erupted in discordant frequencies as the Xylaxians processed this revelation. Their perfect formations, their optimized defense patterns, all had been slowly, patiently maneuvered into position over months of careful manipulation. Your species. Unity Through Optimization's voice carried the first note of genuine respect Blackwood had heard from a Xylaxian. Has been waiting, like your predators. We learned from the best, Blackwood replied. Earth taught us that sometimes the most powerful position is the one that appears weakest. That patience isn't inefficiency, it's power. The Council's biolights pulsed in patterns of rapid calculation as they reassessed 6 months of interaction with humanity. Every seemingly primitive response, every apparent technological gap, every inefficient defensive position, all had been part of a strategy as old as Earth's first predators. You could have struck at any time. Progress Through Motion realized, its crystalline form showing patterns of new understanding. We could have, Blackwood agreed. But like the crocodile, we wanted you to come to the right position first, to understand exactly what you were dealing with. She smiled again, and this time, there was no mistaking the predatory edge in her expression. Now, Shall we discuss those optimization plans of yours again? In the Grand Conference Chamber of the United Earth Defense Council, the scene couldn't have been more different from the first contact 6 months ago. The Xylaxian delegation no longer towered over their human counterparts with crystalline superiority. Instead, their forms shifted through subtle patterns that Commander Blackwood had learned to recognize as respectful attention. We have reviewed the complete data regarding Earth's evolutionary strategies, Unity through optimization announced, its voice modulated to convey formal acknowledgement. Our initial assessment was a diplomatic way of saying you completely misunderstood us, Dr. Corey remarked, but her tone held no mockery. Just as you misunderstood the power of patience in our ecosystem. The Supreme Coordinator's form rippled in what had become their equivalent of a contemplative nod. Through the chamber's vast windows, the combined fleets of Earth and the Xylaxian Empire hung in high orbit, no longer in opposition, but in a carefully negotiated balance of power. Your species' ability to pattern military strategy after biological hunting behaviors is unprecedented, Unity admitted. In all our encounters across 17 star systems, we have never encountered a civilization that turned apparent inefficiency into tactical advantage. Blackwood stepped forward, watching the play of light through the alien's crystalline form. That's because you were looking for advancement in the wrong direction. You saw our predators' patience as a weakness, their ability to wait as a flaw. You never considered that we might have built our entire civilization on understanding the power of the perfect moment. The chamber's holographic displays activated, showing the culmination of their months-long strategy. The careful positioning of Earth's defense forces, hidden in plain sight. The gradual revelation of their true technological capabilities, timed precisely like a crocodile's strike. The Xylaxians had come expecting to find prey, only to discover they had been the ones being stalked all along. A question, if permitted, Progress through motion interjected, its form showing genuine curiosity. Your species could have revealed your true capabilities immediately. Why choose such a patient approach? Because we wanted more than just a military standoff, Dr. Cowrie explained. We wanted understanding. By letting you study our predators, by letting you struggle with the concept of strategic patience, we gave you the tools to comprehend us, to respect us not just for our strength, but for our wisdom. Unity through optimization's biolights pulsed with what Blackwood now recognized as approval. And in doing so, you have taught us a fundamental truth about efficiency that we had overlooked. Sometimes, the most optimal path is not the most direct one. Exactly, Blackwood nodded. Earth's predators didn't evolve to be constantly active, constantly hunting. They evolved to be patient, to wait for the perfect moment, to strike once with absolute precision. That's not inefficiency. It's the highest form of efficiency there is. The Supreme Coordinator's form shifted into the formal patterns of diplomatic accord. Therefore, we propose a new relationship between our civilizations, not one of optimization and submission, but of mutual learning and respect. We accept. General Reeves spoke for the first time, stepping forward to stand beside Blackwood. Our predators have taught us that the strongest relationships are often built on understanding our differences, not eliminating them. As the formal treaty took shape, Blackwood found herself thinking of that first crocodile the Xylaxians had studied, still waiting in its pond, still teaching its lesson about the power of patience. They had come to Earth expecting to find a primitive world in need of their guidance. Instead, they had found teachers of a different kind of wisdom. There is one final matter, Unity announced as the treaty neared completion. We would request permission to maintain our wildlife research stations. There is much more we wish to learn from your world's predators. Blackwood smiled, remembering the horror in their first observations of Earth's hunting patterns. Now that same horror had transformed into fascination, into respect, into a desire to understand rather than change. Permission granted, she replied. After all, every predator knows that the best way to survive isn't to eliminate the competition, it's to learn from. As the Xylaxian delegation departed, their crystalline forms flowing with new patterns of understanding, Blackwood stood at the chamber window, watching their ships move through Earth's orbit with decidedly less rigid precision than they had come to teach humanity about efficiency, only to learn that sometimes the most efficient path was the one that looked, on the surface, like no path at all. Like the crocodile in its pond, humanity had simply waited for the right moment. And in that waiting, they had achieved something far greater than mere survival. They had earned genuine respect from a civilization that had forgotten the power of patience.